Hello, thanks for joining today's webinar. You can enlarge your screen for the optimal viewing experience using these buttons. You can also click the arrow here to view the hidden menu. The section at the very bottom will twirl out a menu that allows you to ask questions for the host to answer. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy this webinar.
I've spent the summer investigating the BOI report, but I still have some questions that I just simply cannot shake. Finally, one webinar to answer all of my BOI questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany and I'm here with Christina and we are the product managers of TaxBandits. Thank you for tuning in again with us this week while we explain about the BOI reporting.
Now, just as a reminder, before we get started, we love to talk about taxes. We have years and years of experience, but we're not tax advisors. So if you have specific questions, if you need tax advice, definitely reach out to a certified tax preparer or the IRS directly.
Yes. And for anyone who hasn't tuned in with us in any of our other webinars on this, we just want to recap what a BOI report is. So the BOI is the Beneficial Ownership Information Report. This was started with the Corporate Transparency Act, started January 1st of this year, and it pretty much applies to all businesses unless you fall under one of the 23 exemptions. So come with us today while we investigate the BOI reporting FAQs. So Christina, what FAQs do we have today?
Well, Tiffany, our first FAQ is what security measures are in place in regard to BOI reporting. So we all know that as everything becomes more and more electronic and more e-file based, there's a big focus on security measures. So when you report through TaxBandits, there are actually a variety of different security measures in place to keep your account secure, your team, your clients. It's fantastic.
Exactly.
So the first one I want to touch on is email address verification. For the admin of the account, that process is in place, but also when they go in to Bandit Collab and add their staff members, their staff members receive an email that prompts them to sign into the account. So again, that added layer of verification there. If you are, I know this isn't necessarily BOI report specific, but that email address verification is also in place for recipients if you're distributing copies of forms. So it's just, it's definitely an added layer of security to make sure that it's going to a valid email address. But do you have any security measures that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, definitely. My favorite is probably the two-factor authentication. We're familiar with it with a lot of our email accounts. It's already been enacted in those areas, but now we also have it in the BOI accounts and the regular accounts as well. It's for preparers and their clients alike.
And on that same note, authenticator apps. So
absolutely.
With TaxBandits, you can have an authenticator app in place. I know common ones are like the Google Authenticator. There's a Microsoft version. There's a lot of different ones. But you can pick the authenticator app that you want to use and connect it to your TaxBandits account so that you're actually getting a code on your phone or your mobile device through that authenticator app as an added layer of security.
Absolutely. And touching back on Bandit Collab, when you invite your team members, they get their own credentials, so you don't have to give yours out, and it's a much more secure way of doing business as a whole, as a firm as a whole, whereas, everybody trying to sign in on one, nobody knows who did anything. It keeps it clean, simple, and secure.
Absolutely. They have their own email address, their own password.
Exactly.
We even have a single sign-on option for Bandit Collab. So if you prefer to use single sign-on for your staff members, that's available. But to your point, not only is it secure, it adds to transparency, which is also really a part of the security process. So in your TaxBandits activity log, you're able to see which of the staff members completed actions for clients, what was done when. You have timestamps and tracking for everything.
Exactly.
So Bandit Collab is definitely part of those security measures. So Tiffany, what other security measures are in place with TaxBandits?
Let's talk about some credits. So with credits, it's a really good system that you can pre-purchase however many credits you need, and it works account-wide. So it's yours, your staff members, they can use the credits, and it keeps you from having to add a credit card to the account and share that credit card. So you don't have to give the whole team that credit card information, because we know not every business has a company credit card. Sometimes it's the CEO's credit card that's on file. We don't want that. Nobody wants to have to deal with that. And so when purchasing the credits, they're in the account, they're shared, so everybody has access to them. And that keeps the actual credit card number out of everybody else's hands.
And to your point of being able to control like who's filing, you can even set up the Bandit Collab feature so that if you have some team members that shouldn't be able to use the credits, you know, they can just prepare forms. And you can have some team members that just approve. And if you really want to like fine tune who is able to even access the credits, you can have transmitters in place or co-admin in place that are actually able to use that feature. But even then, they still don't have to have that card information. So it's another way of keeping that information secure for sure. Well, on that same note of what's available in the account, I want to talk about secure record retention.
That's a good one.
It is, and it's something that is not, it's just not always available. So having one place to keep your client information, the BOI report information, so you can see what was submitted previously, you can see the information that the client gave to you, you have a secure way to keep track of all of that data so that if they need a corrected report, or if they need a newly exempt report, or if they just can't remember if they gave you the right address, you're able to go and see what was completed, what the status of those reports was. All of that information is available in one secure location through your TaxBandits account. So I know we've spent a lot of time on our first FAQ, but it's a big deal. And there's a lot of different things that play into the security of that account.
Absolutely. And another FAQ is, how do I know I need a report and when?
And that is probably one of the most common, like right after security, because it's such a different process with the BOI.
It is.
We support over 40 different forms. We support state filing, and typically, when you're looking at whether you're required to file, it's if you fall into this certain category or reach this threshold or whatever it may be. That's kind of how you know. And with the BOI, we're just hearing so much feedback that it's a little bit confusing, because it's kind of the opposite. It's sort of everybody might need to, unless, like you mentioned earlier, you fall into one of these 23 exemptions. So for companies that aren't sure, it's really, at this point, it's really a matter of taking a look at the BOI requirements and those exemptions and figuring out, do you fall into one of these exemptions, or how is this impacting you, instead of you're only required to file if. It's kind of everybody's required to file unless is sort of the tone of things.
Exactly. And with those exemptions, we've learned that just because you fit into most of the exemption, it doesn't necessarily apply. So you have to fit into all parts
all of the
that
qualifying elements of that. There's a large entity exemption.
Yes.
And I believe is it 6 points under?
Yes,
it
is
it
6
goes
different
into
points.
Receipts and your location and your offices and your operation, and it's really specific. So it's definitely something to check out. And because it is so specific, and there are so many exemptions with their own kind of sub requirements, we actually have added a BOI exemption checker to TaxBandits.com. So if you're not sure whether or not you're required to file, head over to TaxBandits.com, go to our BOIR page, and just scroll down. We have a checker available so that you're able to input information about your organization, your company, the company that you're reporting for, whatever
It's
it
just
may
a quick
be.
questionnaire, and you boom, boom, boom,
Exactly.
and you find out whether you have to do it or not.
Based on those exemptions.
Exactly.
So it's definitely a really helpful tool at this point.
Definitely. And tagging on to that, we've also been getting, like, how do I know when it's due?
Yeah, because it's not an annual form like so many of them are.
Exactly. And with the exemption checker, you can actually find your due date as well. We have a BOIR due date finder right there with that, and you'll also be able to see when you're due.
Exactly. You just put in a little bit of information about the company, and it's going to use that against the requirements and let you know what you're looking at for that due date.
Exactly.
Okay, so Tiffany, our next question that we're just hearing a lot is how do you know what to do if there's a change? So we know something unique about the BOIR is if your address changes, if the beneficial owner changes, if the ID expires, like there are all these things that could cause a new report to be needed, or if you move. So can you talk a little bit about that process and what's involved?
Definitely. So when you are notified as the preparer that something regarding the business has changed, the beneficial owners, the address, etc. When you're notified, then you just come into your TaxBandits account and you can either file a corrected or an updated report. And this depends on what type of correction or update is needed. And so once you do that, you just follow along, you select the business that you've already filed for, and then it'll give you the option, and you just follow the prompts and you'll be good to go.
So it's pretty much just like the initial, but with the new or like updated information.
Exactly. With that, how do they get the information from their clients?
That's a great question. I know we've been hearing about that a lot too. As a preparer, they have a lot of this business information. You know, they know the name and the EIN and the address, but the BOI report is specifically asking for beneficial ownership details, and so that's not something that preparers are always going to have. Like the ID, like you're not always going to have a copy of your client's ID. So that comes back to Bandit Connect, and we actually did one of our earlier webinars in this series on this. So if you haven't checked that out, go head to our YouTube channel after this and give it a watch. But Bandit Connect allows you to securely invite your client to sign into our portal. And they're actually prompted to fill in the BOIR information, whatever level of access you give them. So if you want them to provide everything, great. If you just want the BOI, like the actual beneficial owner information with their ID, that's fine too. But you get to pick that access, and then they're walked through that in our portal step by step. We have the same level of validations in place so that if they leave something blank that's required, if they put something, there's USPS address validation, all those things are there to help make sure that what they're sending you is accurate.
Yes.
And then when they submit it, they have a record of it through the portal. It updates in your TaxBandits account, and you're able to securely receive that. And again, that goes back to our record retention. So you've got a record of all of that. So you can finish that report and submit it.
And we try to make everything all connected, so you're not having to do more work than you really need to.
Correct. Connected, intuitive. We want it to be an easy process for you and the client. On the note of like connected, you can even custom brand the Bandit Connect portal so that it's seamless for the client. They're not seeing different branding that they're not familiar with.
Exactly.
They can see your logo, your company name, your firm name, whatever it may be, your brand colors. You're able to add your contact information. So it really is you reaching out to the client. You're just using our application.
Exactly. And you're keeping that same level of client preparer trust that they're expecting. So they're not like scared off. Do we have anything that the folks need to keep in mind this week?
As always, if you have not already started getting your BOIR process in place, this is the time.
Oh, it's definitely the time.
I know there's a lot of talk about it right now, but don't wait, because it's going to be the end of the year before we know it. And then we all know what that means. It's 1099 time, W-2s. If you handle ACA forms for any of your clients, that's coming around that corner. 94X forms there, and then, not to mention like corporate and part. Like there's so many things in January and then throughout the spring. And your clients are sort of all going to need this at one time at the end of
Exactly.
the year. And so you don't want to wait and then have your clients want you to take care of this and not have something in place. Do it now. If you don't have a TaxBandits account, go to TaxBandits.com. It's really simple to sign up. We have a full support team available if you have questions. We have phone, email, and chat.
Yes.
But make the account, start adding your clients and your team and getting these things in place so that it's a really seamless tax season.
Absolutely. And thank you all so much for joining us again this week. Please leave any questions and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, make sure, like she said, create your account and let us know if you have any questions. Bye.